Hello, welcome to my channel WWE Pulse.
It's time for another edition of the What Is This Wrestling Match series, where we look at some of the most unique stipulations in all of sports entertainment. And today, we're looking at the last man standing match. Now, if you follow the channel, you may have noticed that we've done quite a few videos on hardcore matches, but today is not going to be another hardcore match, although this match type is sometimes confused with hardcore rules. The last man standing match has very specific rules, and beating someone down so badly that they unanswer the ref. A 10 count is not something that happens in any other match stipulation. So even though it shares similarities with other match types, it definitely stands on its own. So, how does the last man standing match work? Well, the name pretty much says it all. This is a match where the only way to win is by beating your opponent down, so that they are unable to answer the referee's 10 count after a fall. In other words, there are no pinfalls and there are no submissions in a last man standing match. The only way to win is to literally beat the living daylight out of your opponent and make them unable to answer the referee's 10 count. If that sounds simple, that's because it kind of is. There aren't many rules in a last man standing match. For example, weapons are usually allowed, so you can use a steel chair or a trash can lid, or whatever else you want to try and take your opponent out. Also, there's no disqualification, so you don't have to worry about going too far, because anything goes in an effort to win the match. In fact, there are rarely any rules at all in a last man standing match, which made sense given the violent nature of the contest. But what if your opponent is down and can't answer the 10 count, but they still have a pulse and they're still breathing? Well, you might think that would be enough to win the match, but actually no, that's not the case. To win a last man standing match, you have to make your opponent completely unresponsive. That means that when the ref starts his 10 count, if your opponent is still breathing, still moving, or still has a pulse, you have to keep attacking him until he either stops breathing, he stops moving, or he passes out. In other words, you have to make your opponent completely unconscious before the match is over. Sounds brutal, right? Well, it really is. And that is why last man standing matches are usually only contested by hardcore wrestlers or wrestlers who just flat out hate each other, because in a last man standing match, there is no room for error. If you get caught with a weapon, or if you get hit with a high impact move like a chair shot to the head, there's a good chance that you're gonna lose the match. And that's exactly what happened to Vader in his first ever last man standing match against Sting in 1997. Vader was actually able to knock Sting out cold with a brutal powerbomb on concrete. But despite the fact that Sting was clearly knocked out, the referee still began his 10 counts. Vader made the mistake of celebrating a little bit too early. And when he turned around, Sting had recovered enough to answer the 10 count and win the match. Vader would eventually get his revenge on Sting in a rematch later that same night. But that just goes to show you how dangerous this match type really is. Even if you think you've won, you have to keep your foot on the gas until your opponent is completely unconscious. Otherwise, they might just surprise you and answer the 10 count anyway. And speaking of answering the 10 count, there's actually a little bit more to it than that. You see, in order for a wrestler to win a last man standing match, they also have to stay on their feet. In other words, if you're the one who's being attacked, You can still win the match as long as you stay on your feet and answer the 10 count. Oh, there are certain circumstances where a wrestler will automatically lose the match if they answer the 10 count. For example, if a wrestler answers the 10 count while on their knees, they will automatically lose the match. In addition, if a wrestler answers the 10 count while holding onto the ropes, they will also lose the match. Basically, to win a last man standing match, you have to answer the 10 count while on your feet without any assistance. That's why last man standing matches are often referred to as no ropes, no rules matches, since there are no ropes in the ring to help you up and no referees to come to your aid. It's every man for himself in a last man standing match, which is it's so important to take advantage of your opponent and keep the offensive moves coming. Because if you let up for even a second, your opponent could very well make a comeback and end up taking you out instead. For example, in 2007, John Cena and Shawn Michaels went to a 60-minute draw in a last man standing match at the Unforgiven No, technically it was a draw, but both men were incapacitated and neither one was able to answer the referee's 10 count. As a result, the match ended in a draw. But it is safe to say that both men could have easily won the match if they had just capitalized on the opportunities that they had. There is also another stipulation, sometimes added to last man standing, much as known as the on-the-floor rule, in an effort to keep the action fast-paced and prevent wrestlers from stalling by hugging the ropes. Some last man standing matches are fought with a rule that if a wrestler is knocked down, they must stay down. In other words, if a wrestler is knocked down in a last man standing match, they have to stay on the mat until the other wrestler gives up or the referee counts to 10. Now, this isn't a hard and fast rule in all last man standing matches, but it is something that's occasionally added to keep the action fast-paced and exciting. And believe me, without this rule, last man standing matches can become quite the snooze fest. For example, in a last man standing match in Japan in 2008, two wrestlers named Kohei Sato and Kenta were fighting. The match went on for nearly 30 minutes, with neither man being able to take the other out. Eventually, Sato landed a superplex off the top rope, and it looked like he was gone now in the match. But unbelievably, Kenta was still able to answer the 10 counts. After the match, it was revealed that Kenta suffered a concussion on a previous headbutt, which is why he was able to answer the 10 count despite suffering a devastating superplex. What a crazy story. In more recent years, the last man standing match has fallen out of favor, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened at all. In 2016, Brock Lesnar and Dean Ambrose had a last man standing match at the No Mercy pay-per-view. This match was a lot different from other last man standing matches. No, because Lesnar and Ambrose had to fight inside a steel cage. Despite the cage, this match was still brutal. Lesnar took control early on and battered Ambrose with the cage, the announce table, and anything else he could get his hands on. Ambrose did make a valiant effort to stay in the match, but eventually Lesnar hit him with an F5 on the concrete floor, and Ambrose was unable to answer the 10 counts. As a result, Lesnar picked up the win, and that's the last man standing match. Do you enjoy watching last man standing match? Which wrestlers do you think would fare well in this match type, and which wrestlers would probably avoid it at all costs? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Okay guys, thank you for watching my videos.